The Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience. Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience FedEx St. Jude Classic DraftKings picks and preview before we get into everything, because there are some notable withdrawals that we should talk about. Well, notable being really loose, but there are guys that have pulled out of this tournament. Probably more to come, so you're going to want to keep up to date on my cheat sheet on dkplaybook.com, or use Twitter. That tends to help. But give the episode a like, goes a long way. If you're listening to the podcast version, please rate and review. Even if you don't leave the review, just scroll down on iTunes, hit 5 stars. Be on your way. Don't hit 1 star. That'd be bad news. So don't do that. Just 5 stars. Big U.S. Open coverage coming up all week. Hopefully, the DraftKings pricing comes out very soon. But Thursday, Feinberg and I will be giving our preliminary breakdown of the field, some bets that we're looking at right away. Friday, you're going to get the mega DraftKings U.S. Open Millionaire Maker Show. Ben Raza, Mike Leone, as they want to do, come on for these shows. We argue about every player in the field. Probably not the U.S. Open, because there's way too many people in the field and a bunch of bums that no one wants to take anyway. And then on Monday, Feinberg and I will be back with Cuss to finalize our picks. We got ownership show on Tuesday, live chat on Wednesday. No live chat this week because I'm doing U.S. Open stuff. Plus, there's going to be a World Cup show coming out that day too, so remember to check that out. I think that's everything. Now, let's get into it. St. Jude, Rick Gehman is on the line from the Rick Run Good YouTube channel at DFS On Demand, dfsondemand.com. What's going on, dude?
Not much, Pat. How are you?
Good. I thank you. Listen, you are probably the most popular guest I've injected into the show in quite some time, so thank you for making people like me a little bit more because they like you so much.
Cool. Yeah, no pressure or anything. We'll see if I can keep that popularity going.
Yeah, listen, this is a terrible field. What are we going to do? You're like, oh, yeah, you got to play Rob Oppenheim. Maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, it's going to get pretty ugly and fall off a cliff down here at the bottom, so I guess we'll have to figure something out.
All right, and I do want to let everyone know I'm going to be running some contests during the week, so pay attention to those U.S. Open shows. We got some DK bucks to give away for trying to get into the Millionaire Maker, and maybe, just maybe, there is a yearly membership to Fantasy National on the line. Even if you already are a member, you can win this. It's going to be a draw. I'm going to tell you what it is on the U.S. Open show, so stay tuned for that because, hey, good value there for free, please. This is what everyone's using. You might want to use it too. Strategy for this week. There's a lot of really high-end names. And, I guess I should run through the WD. So far, here's what we know. Keegan Bradley's out. Russell Knox out. Patrick Rodgers out. We're really waiting on Adam Scott's final word to see what's going on. I doubt he ends up playing. But, hey, who knows? As of right now, he is in. So we'll talk about him like he's in. But at the very high end, we got some bigger names. And then you kind of go down to the $7,700, $7,800 level, and there's a drop-off. Everyone... You can argue if Chez Reavie is really that much better than Scott Brown. He probably is marginally. Is he $600 better? I don't really know. So I think a lot of people might go balanced just because the drop off at the bottom just is terrifying to go look at. But this does seem like a week where stars and scrubs would really come into play because everyone's just a crapshoot down here.
Yeah, if you go for the balanced option, your balanced lineup is going to be one of the most ugly balanced lineups you could possibly get in a tournament. It's going to be guys like a lot of Palmer, a lot of Harris English, a lot of Chris Kirk, which no offense to those guys, but they're not very good. So I'm willing to pay up, go grab one of these top end studs. There's a ton of those flyers down at the bottom. I think everyone's going to have their hand forced to go and roster them. So stars and scrubs is probably not only a valid strategy, but one that you might be forced into doing.
All right, so in terms of the course, we got TPC Southwind. There's a lot of balls going to end up being in the water since 2003. Over 5,000 have found the Agua, which is kind of hilarious. And no one really ever imagines this as a course where everyone just get wet the entire time. Like Ethan Hawke in training day, smoking that PCP, just get wet the entire day. But you can see a lot of blow-ups going on here. So rebounding, birdie or better percentage. Phil's going to make 4 quadruple bogeys, yet somehow birdie the other like 12 holes on the course. So that's something to watch out for. So birdie or better is always baked into what I do. Strokes gained approach, almost 3 times more valuable in terms of coming inside the top 10 as strokes gained off the tee, which I found very interesting for this course. It's not super long, just over 7,200 yards. It's a par 70, so par 4 scoring is going to rate very highly in the model that I have punched into Fantasy National. What are you looking at? Because I know you like to run the regression models. What's really popped for you?
Yep, that's right. And it's fairly standard this week. You get a lot of the strokes gained off the tee stats. Strokes gained approach seems to be one of the highest correlated stats. And I had both par 4 birdie or better and par 4 scoring. Par 4 birdie or better seems to be a little bit of a higher correlated stat, but that might be a little bit of noise. So just par 4s in general, with it being a par 70, is going to be very important. And then you're right, Pat. I mean, there's big numbers lurking everywhere. Like, there's an opportunity to blow up. Your cut sweats are going to be very sweaty. This thing's not over when they get to 18. So, I mean, bogey avoidance is going to show up a lot. And yeah, we're just going to try to dodge some landmines for some guys who might start off really poorly on the front nine and might say, oh, I got a wrist injury, or I'm not feeling so well. I might just head over to Shinnecock.
Oh, good God. I hope that doesn't happen. Remember when Dustin did it like 2 years ago?
Yeah, I do. He was at Chambers Bay like 12 hours later.
Yeah, and almost won. Yeah, my wrist hurts, though. It's in terrible shape.
Right, exactly.
All right, if we go to the very top, we have the $10,000 level. There are 5 guys in that range. Dustin Johnson is the most expensive player on the board. He kicks it all off. He's $11,700. Then Brooks Koepka is $11,100. Phil is $10,600. Henrik Stenson is $10,400, and Daniel Berger, the 2-time defending champion, is an even $10,000. I'm thinking, listen, Phil is just, even in terms of total strokes gained, he's one of the few players that plays this event every year. So obviously, if you're looking at anything that's a stat that just rolls over through time, it's cumulative that he's going to be in the lead, minus 41 the past 5 years. Well, if you average that out, that means he can't win because the winner's always in double digits. So that's kind of tough. Still a pretty good play for the price. Brooks has a second and a third at this course before. Dustin has won this event before. Berger, obviously, 2 of them. I like Stenson. Stenson hasn't played this course since 2012. I think he went under the radar a little bit last week. Had a T13. That's not bad. But if you just go back and look at his past 5 starts, he has 3 top 10s in there. No finish worse than like 21st. It's pretty good. I like Dustin a lot. But for the savings that you're getting on Henrik Stenson, this kind of seems like the right course for him. He's going to hit all the fairways. He's going to score on the par 4s. Short game isn't necessarily the biggest thing because it's an easy scrambling course. There's going to be lots of scrambling to be had, mainly because of all the water balls. But still, like, it's not going to be the end of the world. Around the green stuff doesn't matter all that much. So I like Stenson the best. Then I'm going to Dustin. And then probably Phil because of the savings that you get over Brooks.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. As much as I love Dustin Johnson, he finds a way into either my bets or my lineups every single week. This just doesn't feel like an opportunity to get too much of him. He's significantly more expensive than the rest of his peers here. And yeah, you get some really good options right below him, right? I agree. Stenson, for the most part, flies under the radar because he doesn't play all that often. That's kind of splits time on the bigger events on the Euro Tour. He is the type of player that fits this course perfectly, right? He's going to gain strokes from the fairway. He's going to putt it well enough. I like Stenson a lot at 10,400. Phil always seems to pop up on its DraftKings scoring, right? Pat, you mentioned it. He's going to make bogeys. He's going to make doubles. He might make some quads. But he's always out there under par. He's actually averaging, right after Dustin Johnson, the second most DraftKings points gained since January 1st. So he's played something like 13 events. He's gaining like 26 DraftKings points on the field compared to Dustin Johnson's 36. Those are the top 2 in the field, which goes to show you knowing your scoring system is really important. But I imagine I will be most overweight on Brooks Koepka. He's my guy. You mentioned the 2 great results, Pat, but we've seen him finish here 4 years in a row. So it's not like we have a huge concern of him, starting off slow and heading to the US Open. And then Koepka's kind of interesting because he's rounding into form, right? A lot of these guys are trying to, temper their workload. They're trying to make sure that they're ready for the majors. And Koepka's kind of just gearing up, coming back from that wrist injury. And it seems like he is locked and loaded for another high finish here.
Well, the weird thing about Brooks, because initially I was with you, and 11-1 seems like a lot to pay. And listen, it's not that I'm not going to have zero Brooks Koepka, but I might be around field average, probably like 15, maybe 20% on him. But I feel like the approach game really isn't where it should be. I think the rest of his game is masking what he's doing with his irons right now, which aren't great. Like even in his runner-up performance at Fort Worth, like he lost almost 3 strokes with his irons, gained almost 5 around the greens, gained over 8 with his putter. Like if you're going to gain 8 strokes putting, you're going to be inside the top 5. Like that's just going to be a thing that happens, especially with how well he hits it off the tee. But if this becomes a thing where, you know, the irons aren't clicking again this week, and like even if you go back and look at the players, he gained 2.6. Well, you know, he had an albatross on one of those holes, which is going to account for a lot of that throughout the course of the week. That it's not that I want to be off of him. I think that Brooks, in terms of just class of players, so much higher than, you know, it's Stenson, Brooks, and DJ. Those are the 3 guys in terms of like pure pedigree world ranking who you're looking at. Phil and like Berger are right below that, along with like Finau. But I don't know. I think I would pay up for Dustin if I had the money to go pay up for Brooks.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you. I'm just kind of flipping through and opening the range of stats here for Brooks Koepka. You're right. He's essentially an even strokes gained approach player since January 1st. But if you go back and continue to open that window up, that's kind of his MO. He just hovers right around just like a neutral strokes gained approach player. I'm now back like 3 years. I think what we've seen from Koepka is that he can find success and he can win tournaments like the US Open. I don't know what he was as far as approach goes that week, but he can contend by being this kind of average iron player.
So what do we do with Phil? Do we expect Phil to be the chalkiest guy on the board?
Yeah, I guess he is, but how do you feel? I'm always confused about this. Like Berger at 10,000, defending champion ×2. Like not really great form coming in. I feel like the past champ always gets a boost. He's going to have the stellar course history because he's only teed it up here 2 times. I think Phil will be popular, but like, what do we do with Daniel Berger?
I don't know. He's my least favorite of the 5. He is the cheapest of the 5. But no, I don't really have a good gauge on where he's at. Like he's just been so middling recently. Like he hasn't been bad by any means, but right. You just don't see any of those performances. But do you just put the faith in that he knows what to do in Memphis?
Yeah, I'm not a big believer that something just like a flip switches and these guys get to a place that they like and all of a sudden they can hit their driver straight or something like that. I agree with you. He's making cuts, but finishing, 50th, 55th. I will probably be fine never playing Daniel Berger at $10,000, and I'll just, live and die with that decision.
So just full out fade on Daniel Berger, let the rest of the field have him and hope he misses the cut?
Yeah, exactly right.
I mean, I think I might go with you on that. I will be the most overweight on Stenson of anyone in this range, though.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. There's, 10,000 is too much for Berger. I don't love paying 11,700 for Dustin Johnson. Anything in the middle, I'm pretty cool with.
Yeah, I'll probably end up with the same amount of Dustin and Brooks. Probably a little bit more of Dustin, depending on what I end up doing at the bottom. But just the avenues that even Phil and or Stenson allow you to build the rest of the way aren't the end of the world. Like even if we do go stars and scrubs, the scrubs are looking a bit less scrubby if you start with Stenson instead of Dustin.
Yeah, I was going to say, I haven't built too many lineups yet, so I haven't plugged any of these guys in, and it might really get scary when you get Brooks or DJ in there. But yeah, I'll take your word for it for now that not too scrubby. Maybe it's Troy Merritt instead of, Dominic Bozzelli, which is, I guess, is a big difference.
Well, I mean, I like Troy Merritt this week. You just brought him up. Are we all on Troy Merritt this week?
It's certainly going to seem that way. There's been a little bit of buzz, and I think it's warranted. I guess we could talk about him when we get down there.
Yeah, you have $7,600 remaining if you start with Dustin Johnson. So if there's a scrub that you really like let's say you're a huge fan of Da Points, and he comes in at $6,600, all of a sudden, your average salary goes up a little bit, and then you can start hitting that I don't know, even if you went with someone else at Bermuda Ben Martin at $7,000, then you can sneak into that lower $8,000 level, which isn't a terrible build. Because then you might get, you mentioned the Chris Kirks of the world, but you could potentially afford Uline and List along with someone else, and then that lineup's not looking so bad anymore.
Yeah, you're right. I think you have to find one guy that kind of unlocks the whole thing, right? And it's whether you take just an elite strokes gain approach player at like 6,800, somebody like maybe a Stuart Sink who probably can't win this event, but his upside is a top 25. If you can find someone to unlock the rest of the lineup, I will find myself having a lot more of DJ and a lot more of Koepka.
In terms of ownership from this top end, obviously it's Tuesday morning, so we're not going to have the best gauge on this, but I would think Stenson and Phil will stand out above the rest of the plus $10,000 guys just because of the price discount that you get. Then I would imagine Dustin's probably a slightly more owned than Brooks, but not by much. And then like Daniel Berger will be like 5 to 7% lower than whoever the lowest guy is.
Yeah, that's probably right. It's weird, right? You get a week it's a weak field. There's a lot of names that fans have not heard of or are unwilling to play. Maybe that's a better statement. So they're going to flock to names that they know. DJ, Phil, Stenson, and then I think there's value to be had kind of in this, not $9,000 range, maybe high eights.
All right, well, let's talk about the nines because this is where some of the WDs come into play. At the very bottom at 9,000, Keegan Bradley withdrew, so you're left with Horschel, Scott, Charles, very Anderkirst, Charles Schwartzel. Good for next week though. And Tony Finau and Ben A, $93 and $9,200. Obviously, I'm a sucker for Finau. I always am. He's cheaper than a lot of these guys that he probably shouldn't be. So I like him a lot. I think that Benny Ann might get some momentum from last week, and ownership will carry on to him. Maybe people will forget about Finau just a little bit, but I prefer Finau to him. But like Billy Horschel's the one that I just don't know if people are going to own him. And besides Phil, he's the one with all the course history.
Yeah, I think it only depends on the format for me. Billy Horschel is all over the place, right? If you're willing to take on the volatility, it's great. He's the type of player you're looking for. I'd never roster him in a cash lineup. His DraftKings gained since January 1st. It's almost dead even. He's an average player. But what you're seeing is 1 week he'll gain 30 DraftKings points. The next week he'll lose 40. Then he'll gain 50. Like it's literally all over the map, Pat. So I think it's okay as long as you know what you're buying into, right? You're not buying into a safe player. You're buying into a guy who is just as likely to finish T2 as he is to finish 155th.
But let's say I can give you Billy Horschel 6% in giant tournaments, which is probably around where he's going to come in. Would that lead you towards him a little bit, even if it was like 2 of 20 lineups?
Pat, I'm like a total sucker for punishment. Yeah, I love watching my guys just blow up and tear me up. So I love the risk. Like I take on the great risk for great reward. So yes, me personally, give me Horschel at 6%. I'll have, again, you don't have to get too much of him to be significantly overweight on the field. But I know that a lot of people don't like that and aren't willing to, build rosters in that manner. But yes, me personally, sure.
It just seems like one of those things where everyone's going to pay up for one of the above $10,000 guys, and he is just the very logical pivot point from all of them. So I'll probably end up with a few shares as well, but if I was going to make the case against Brooks and his approaches, Billy Horschel has just been riding a hot putter for like 6 weeks now.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a stat that's obviously, again, very volatile in itself. And if that putter doesn't show up, it's going to be curtains for him pretty early. But you're right. I mean, I don't know where else to go. Like Adam Scott, everyone's going to love, I assume. But we're just kind of refreshing Twitter to see if he's going to withdraw. I'm always pretty much a sucker for Finau. But I mean, outside of these guys and Horschel at 9,700, like what's our best option here in the nines?
I think it's Finau. I think objectively he's the best play, even over Adam Scott. I think that he's the better play. But I do think that Benny Ann's going to draw some interest, and he should because he's an excellent ball striker, but we got the putting performance we always wanted to get out of him last week, and he couldn't close. Like, do you really believe 2 weeks in a row one of the worst putters on tour is just going to keep it rolling?
No, not really. I guess if I have $9,200 left, I wouldn't be upset about it if he's just like the last guy that I plug in. I just don't think that there's many lineups that I'm creating where Benny An is like the first, second, or third guy into that lineup. He's always going to be like the fifth or sixth guy into that lineup, if that's the way to think about it. Just because I think if by default I'm handcuffed to him, fine, but I'm not thrilled to go out and roster him for that exact reason, Pat. It's just like we finally got the week. You couldn't win, and now we're going to need another. It's like LeBron. Like LeBron has to score 50 points a night for the Cavs to win. You finally get that night, and they don't win. Like, can we really expect him to do it every single night? I don't know if we can expect Ben to continue to gain as many strokes on the green as he did last week.
Well, what do we do with Charles Schwartzel then? Because he's probably going to be the second lowest owned compared to Horschel. And that really depends on what happens to Adam Scott, I think. If he withdraws, you'll see that ownership disperse. And then all of a sudden, like, Finau's the highest owned guy in the field, or Neiman or something like that. But when I look at Schwartzel, I really liked him coming into last week. I don't like the fact that he's Ander-cursed. But he continues to gain strokes off the tee, which is something that he just was not doing for like the first 5 months of the year. But 3 consecutive tournaments off the tee. The approach went away a little bit last week after 2 pretty fire weeks, and the putting just completely disappeared a week ago. He lost over 4 strokes. That's why he missed the cut. I do kind of like him next week at Shinnecock Hill, so I don't want to see him have that great of a week here to kind of keep people off of his scent. But I think that if you can get him in single-digit ownership, I mean, he's probably a better player than Billy Horschel, and he's cheaper.
I agree with both of those. He's definitely cheaper. We can measure that. And I believe he's definitely a better player than Billy Horschel is. Yeah, this is such an interesting range. This is probably where GPPs will be won. I feel like this range is either going to be, there's 2 options. If Adam Scott tees it up, his ownership is going to be massive because him and Finau are really the only 2 good options here. And then if Adam Scott doesn't play, like, could this be a range where just no one touches it? And like anyone you go and grab, whether it's Ben, whether it's Schwartzel, whether it's Horschel, is that like 7% or under, and this is going to win a GPP. I'm just really interested. And Pat, maybe you've made some more lineups to this point. Are these guys falling into the lineups that you're creating?
Not really. Finau is, because I'm going out of my way to put Finau in lineups. But right. I do think that people will go out of their way to put Ben in lineups as well.
Okay.
So if you're going to start balanced, you could start in this range. You go like Finau and Neiman, and you're not a disaster the rest of the way.
I wouldn't mind that at all. Yeah, I mean, Neiman's a guy I'm sure we'll talk about. Or I mean, 2 straight high finishes. The kid seems like he is super legit, handling the pressure really well. I'm fine with starting a lot of lineups with Neiman, and then adding someone like Finau. Like, okay, I could be fine with that. Those are probably the best 2 options for me in this range. There's a couple of others, but Neiman seems to be like the real deal, right?
Yeah, I think so too. But if you start your team and Finau, Neiman, you're looking at 3 of the highest owned guys. Like, that's a super. I don't know if that combination of the 3 of them will end up being super chalky, because a lot of people will take one of the $10,000 guys, take one of them, and then drop down instead of just building with all 3 of them. But if people are going with a balanced approach, that could be a way to do it. If you wanted to get off some of that ownership, switch out Ben for Charles Schwartzel or for Billy Horschel or whoever it is, and then work your lineups that way. That could be a way to still get the chalky guys, but avoid some of the just overall duplicated lineups.
Yeah, that's interesting. When you package those guys together, so individually they might be some of the higher owned players, but how many lineups are going to have all 3 of them, which is a pretty interesting way to look at it. Once I start building lineups, I'll probably get a better feel on what's possible. I'm very nervous about the lower range, so I might by default just end up having I'll just take Neiman because he's been so great recently, or I'll just throw Peter Uihlein into every single lineup. Like, I might just have to bank on those guys a little more.
So for the entire $8,000 range, Neiman does kick it off. He's $8,900. He's at the very top tier of that. Steve Stricker is right with him as well, who's just continues to churn out pretty good performances, to be quite honest with you. And then it drops down into Knox, who is withdrawn, so don't use him. CH3, Uihlein, who you just mentioned, Appy Barnrat, List, Palmer, English, JB Holmes coming off a good putting week, but that was about it. And then Chris Kirk down to $8,000. So for you, Neiman and Uihlein are the 2 that you like here?
Yeah, so Neiman, Uihlein. So Uihlein just knocking at the door, playing really well. I assume a lot of people have no idea, or don't know who he is, or aren't willing to roster him yet. But Peter Uihlein, certainly one of my top options. And then we have to go with the man, the myth, the legend, Luke List.
Of course.
Pops up on every model. He's the king. But really, he hasn't lost DraftKings points to the field, or I guess he's only lost points to the field twice since Torrey Pines. He's actually playing really well. And am I confusing him with someone else? But now, I mean, like a less than driver course like this, hasn't he found some success at what was it, RBC? I'm trying to think where this was.
Yeah, no, it was 2 of them. So if you take less than driver courses that are played on Bermuda, he lost in the playoff to Justin Thomas at Honda, and then he came 3rd or 2nd at RBC Heritage. almost. They're not similar layouts, but I mean, there's a lot of water at Honda. There's a lot of water here. There are narrow fairways at RBC Heritage. There are very narrow fairways here. Listen, I'm going to be using Luke List. I bet Luke List. I use Luke List every single week. And the narrative around List is really bizarre. And I think it's that he gets talked up so much that people like freak out that he doesn't win, but he's never, outside of like 1 or 2 weeks where he was priced to win and disappointed, other than that, like you mentioned, he's always a positive value in terms of DraftKings scoring. Because even in the weeks where he doesn't like finish super highly in the actual leaderboard, his DraftKings pricing usually ends up higher than that. It's like Bubba.
Yeah, the perception and reality on Luke List is very, someone should do like a 30 for 30 on this or something where, you know, he pops up on every model. He gets talked about. So he's kind of like, okay, he's popular. And then he finishes 20th and everyone's like, well, it's like if you had a super chalk guy who kind of burned you, I don't want to play him again. But Luke List in 20th and he keeps popping out 20th finishes. Like that's kind of cool. And, you know, it's counterintuitive because he pops up on all these, you know, he's a big guy. He can hit it pretty far, but it seems like these less than driver courses where you can kind of dial it back a little bit. We've seen the metrics that he has. Like, I agree with you, Pat. I think List's a pretty good play.
Yeah, I love him here. I think where the gap comes in is that when he rates out in these models, and the same thing has happened to Molinari, the same thing has happened to Paul Casey for years, is that when you look statistically at how they rate out and where they should project, like Luke List projects out like he's Dustin Johnson. But yeah. Of course he's not Dustin Johnson, but the stats would say that they're a lot closer than maybe you think. Now, a lot of List's problems are just putting related, and Dustin Johnson, pretty good putter. But people then get the expectations that he's just going to win every week. But this is the year of like the weirdo stat guys who keep winning.
Yeah, and I don't have his like full, last few years, but I feel like, I mean, the number of top 10s he's had this year, I feel like has got to be the most in his career. So it's not just blowing smoke anymore when he's popped up as, you know, a top 5 guy in every single week of the model. For the last 3 years, he actually has some results to back it up. So yeah, I mean, the perception's so interesting, but if we kind of remove his name, remove what the rest of the community is talking about, I think he's a solid play.
From Fantasy National's ownership projections at the moment, and of course these will get updated on the site the more and more people start to build lineups and we get a better sense of it. Right now, there's only been 800 generated lineups so far, so this is what we're actually taking it from. That sample will increase by like 3-4-fold by the time that everything actually comes around. But Joel Dahmen's actually projected to be the highest owned guy per Fantasy National. That's not going to be the case, folks, so don't worry about that.
They're too sharp.
Listen, $7,100 for Joel Dahmen coming into the week is a very good price. I like him. I don't think that his ownership gets up that highly because once you inject everyone else into the world in this, it'll be like, who the fuck is Joel Dahmen?
The Fantasy National members are too sharp, and they're driving up Dahmen's ownership on that site. But I agree, when you get it on DraftKings, it's not going to be close.
Yeah, so if you get like 10% from Dahmen, that's probably a more realistic number. But after that, it starts to flesh out a little bit. Like List is the next highest, Stenson, Ben Crane, Ben Ann, Tony Finau, and then it was Keegan Bradley who was withdrawn. So we'll see where his numbers end up going. I'm guessing if people like Finau and On to begin with, then Neiman's going to get a bump up, and those guys get a bump up. Then you're looking at like Peter Uihlein, who you like, who's in this range as well, a 5th, a 21st, and a 5th in his past 3 starts. I see no reason not to use him.
Yeah, I agree with you. And speaking of kind of, I don't want to jump too far ahead here, but like Keegan Bradley replacements, I'll give you a guy that profiles kind of the same exact way, and it's actually Scott Piercy. I was looking at their stats last night from basically, I think it was from January 1st of this year, and Piercy and Bradley are essentially the same player. Like they're gaining the almost identical strokes off the tee, almost identical off the tee, almost identical approach. They're both absolutely terrible putters, but Scott Piercy's now $1,600 cheaper than Keegan Bradley was. So just kind of from a statistical profile, those two guys were near identical players. And I imagine, Piercy's always popular on second shot courses, right? I don't know what his final ownership is going to be, but we talk about the volatility in the putter. He needs it. He needs to be on the high end. He needs a couple of standard deviations towards the positive, but Piercy's a guy that's probably going to find a lot of my replacements for Keegan.
I guess the one difference, besides the pricing, because Piercy's obviously cheaper, there's a modicum of consistency that comes along with Keegan Bradley that kind of gets overlooked. Since last year's U.S. Open, he's made 23 of 25 cuts, which is shocking.
Yeah, that's actually wild. I would have bet a lot of money it was way less than that.
Yeah, but you have so few like top end finishes. At least when it seems like when Piercy hits, he hits big.
Right.
And then
what did he win? Did he win the team event or like the off week event?
He won the team event with Horschel.
Yeah, of course.
So
that's like his one win for the next 5 years.
So the other guys in the range, like Harris English has won this event before. He's been playing a little bit better. Ryan Palmer's right there. I never use Ryan Palmer really outside of like very early in the season when we're on the West Coast. I don't want any JB Holmes. Chris Kirk does intrigue me a little bit. I don't know what to do with Charles Howell. I don't know what to do with Stricker. So for me, it's List, it's Uline, it's Neiman, and I'm going to have shares of Affy Barnrat as well.
Yeah, and I think that's fine. Like intriguing me is a good word for a lot of these guys. JB Holmes, Chris Kirk. Let me ask you about Kevin Chappell because this doesn't make much sense to me. So he's $7,800. He's missed 4 out of his last 5 cuts. Now he's had a good success here in the past. He had a 4th place finish last year, and he pops up on all of my stats.
Me too.
Like everywhere he pops up. And Vegas has him. I don't know what number you have, but I have him at 66-1. With the rest of these guys around him are 80-1, 100-1, Putnam 150-1. So at least compared to his peers, Vegas is more optimistic. I don't know what to do here. The guy's been playing terribly, but he keeps popping up all over the place.
Well, it's just he seems to do something wrong every single week. Like generally speaking, when you think of Kevin Chappell, not the best putter. Gains a ton of strokes off the tee. He actually bombs it a lot farther than people think, and he gains a ton of strokes through approach. Now, the off the tee stuff went away for a bit, then it came back. And like the irons carried him a little bit, but he was still missing cuts. And then boom, the irons went away. So I don't really know what to do either. I saw a 60-1 number for me, so he's even lower than that compared to some of the people around him. Is it just a blind faith thing? Because I get suckered into Chappell every single week. He's sort of like the Luke List that doesn't pay.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, I am looking at his just, last, 40 rounds or so, and you're right. It's all over the place. It's not like he's always great with his irons or he's always great around the greens. It's literally nothing. There's no consistency here. He just hasn't been able to put it together. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the value seems too good. I'm not naive enough to think that I'm like smarter than Vegas, so I usually kind of just defer to them as, okay, they must know something I don't, or I kind of rely on that a little bit more. And this number just seems too good at $7,800. I mean, what? You're not gonna have to have much of him to be overweight, I assume.
I don't know, because Kevin Chappell's always popular when it comes to DraftKings. Like anyone who uses any sort of statistics and runs any sort of model, it's like how Luke List always ends up with anytime that even when you think that people jump off Luke List, they don't, because they run their models like, oh, Luke List inside the top 3. Like even for me this week, Kevin Chappell's inside the top 15.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe try to get a pulse on it for the rest of the week before I start making lineups. I assume, again, I'm a glutton for punishment. I will probably roster enough Kevin Chappell to make me nauseous. So I don't know. We'll see. I'll go down with the ship, I suppose.
Is it weird that I might like Chris Kirk better?
No, because at least he's played well recently, right? I mean, Kevin Chappell has missed 4 of his last 5 cuts, Pat. I could have done that. Like Chris Kirk has actually had some top 10s. I mean, he's piecing it together. No, I think that's just fine. I think that's smart.
All right. So the rest of this, like 7, like up to, like, did you have any, like, do you have anything with Charles Howell?
No, I mean, I'm not super thrilled to roster any of these guys. My ownership will be Uline. I like Affy Barnrat. Luke List will suck up all my ownership here. Yeah, there's actually guys that I like a lot there. So just by effect of that, the other guys aren't going to get much of my action. All
right, so from that $75 to $8,000, like Tway's been playing a lot better. Braden Thornberry, everyone loves him. He qualified for the U.S. Open as well. 4th place finish this course last year. The Old Miss Am, $7,700. It seems like a lot to pay. Like Putnam's right there, who's been playing really well. And he was like chalk one week, then no one used him the next week, and he actually played pretty well then too. But like he's been an approach master here over the past month, so he's intriguing to me. I have no clue what to do with Ollie, because Ollie just makes cuts and then comes 50th. Corey Connors, Shez, Glover, Snedeker, Lowry, who just qualified for the U.S. Open. Connors is the one who is super intriguing to me because he pops every once in a while. He plays better at these less than driver, shorter courses, these par 70s. We saw it at Valspar. We saw it at Fort Worth. He gained almost 6 strokes with his approaches at Fort Worth too, and gained strokes off the tee. If the putter can come around for him, I don't think that he's going to carry a lot of ownership. So I think if we're going to pivot off some of the chalkier guys in this range, or even use some of the chalkier guys at the top, and we go into this range, I think that Corey Connors could be a name to get away from some ownership that has pretty high upside.
Yeah, there are guys in this range that you are going to get at very, very small ownership numbers. So if that's what you're looking for, you can get it right here. I think Corey Connors is fine. I'm pretty lukewarm on him. I might not be as hot as you are, Pat, but I certainly think compared to his peers, he's fine. Let's talk a little bit about this Braden Thornberry thing. So it is weird because he is more expensive than established tour pros like Brandt Snedeker and Ches Reavie. But Thornberry, with the fourth place last year, he did qualify. I'd almost prefer he didn't qualify, right? And he was playing this week to get in, but at least he's showing that he's playing well. He's still not going to collect a paycheck, right? Because he's still at the University of Mississippi. But yeah, there's something here with this kid, which means I think and he's getting talked up a lot, right? So I assume he's going to suck up a lot of this ownership. You mentioned Kevin Tway, who is another one of these guys who pops off at some of these weaker field events, or actually he's been playing well really recently with 2 top 9s in the last 3 of his starts. So yeah, there's a couple places that I could go here that I'd be completely fine with. But what about Shane Lowry? His Vegas number that I had was 70-1, which is, way better than some of these 125-1 guys. Hasn't been playing extremely well, but is he in the U.S. Open yet? Do we know?
Yeah, he qualified yesterday. So
okay, got it. He did get in yesterday.
Yeah,
okay.
he's in. His game's been coming back around. He's just a guy who can't putt.
Sounds like a lot of these guys, right?
True. He also has been awful off the tee in his past 2 starts, but he has made 4 cuts in a row, which is encouraging. And he's gained strokes with approaches in, let's see here, 10 of his past 12 events, which is not bad. No,
it's not. Yeah, we're down in the range where if you can find someone trending in the right direction, even for a small sample size, right? So when I get down here, I'm going to start shortening my sample, whether it's, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, trying to find a window of just catching someone on that upswing. Maybe they're not at their peak yet, but trying to catch them on their upswing, because that's where we're at. You're not going to get anybody elite down here.
No, and Lowry does rate out really well for me as well. 10th in greens and regulations gained over the past 24 rounds. Par 4s gained, he's 28th. In strokes gained ball striking, he's 11th. So he is trending towards something like you mentioned. It's strange to say this. I might actually like him more next week.
I'm actually okay with that. Yeah, he's like a proven guy. He's been on the tour for a while, right? He's played in some big events. I'm cool with that.
Yeah, and he almost won the U.S. Open 2 years ago when he won Bridgestone.
Right.
He plays hard courses really well, and the winning score of this event's going to be like -12. Like if the winning, it's a lot like Brendan Grace. I know Grace won Heritage before, but like if you can tell me the winning score is -4 for an event, like Brendan Grace is going to be all over my card, and I think Shane Lowry would too.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty safe safe bet there. Okay, I'm cool with that.
So yeah, I mean, I don't hate Lowry, and obviously in terms of pedigree, as compared to like Tway and Connors and these kind of guys, he's way better. But I mean, you could say the same thing about Brandt Snedeker too.
Yeah, you could. Or like when I'm down here, I'm looking at like guys who just have something elite, right? So we're in the 73, 74 range. How about our main man Keith Mitchell? Missed the cut last week. Are we back on?
I mean, at least his first round leader, but I think that I would always prefer Mitchell at like Bombers tracks because he does smash it off the tee. But yeah, I mean, in this sort of field, he's shown the upside. From down here, like I really actually do like Troy Merritt quite a bit at 7,400, and 175-1 just seems a weird price for him. And we know, like, he can be a very elite putter, like a consistent putter. The putting's gone away a little bit recently, but all of a sudden, the approaches have just shown up. You're like, wow, if he can smack an iron, the putting can come around for Troy Merritt. So I'm in on him down at that price. And then, like, Dahman is the other one. Those are, like, really the only two that stood out for me.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. Merritt, I don't want to call him a free space. I think he's a really safe space, right? Like I'd be very confident.
Yeah, good thing you didn't use the term free space to Troy Merritt.
No.
That has the potential to go very wrong.
No, it's a safe. I mean, look at the guys that are next to him here, Pat. It's pretty ugly, right? So, like, I'm way more comfortable playing Troy Merritt at 7,400 than basically any of these guys. So I think that's fine. Keith Mitchell, the only thing, just to kind of throw a bow on that, he played like 5 out of the last 6 weeks. I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but what I love about him is he just makes a ton of birdies, right? So he might not finish highly, but when we look at DraftKings scoring, man, it's always about birdies, and it's always birdie or better, and he fits that mold. Other than that, I think you're absolutely right on Joel Dahman. The Fantasy National members are absolutely right. I assume no one else will be aware of it, but yeah, I think he's like 3 straight top 20s coming in. He finished with a top 20 here last year. I mean, that's like the best you're gonna get for a guy at $7,100.
Well, does it become an ownership point? Let's say you can the Fantasy National is going to be off just because Fantasy National members love him. He's rating out highly in all the models. I know Ulrich over at Fantasy Golf Metrics always likes Joel Dahman because he has been popping for quite some time now. That, the 23% is not going to be a real thing. But let's say I told you he was 13%. Would that make him an ownership fade just on it alone? Like, would you have any shares? Would you match the field? Like, what would you then do with him? Because if he's going to be double-digit ownership at his price point, he's going to be by far the highest owned guy. And let's be real here, he's still Joel Dahman.
Yeah, if you told me he was going to be 13%, I would probably full fade because I'm the type of guy where I'd rather get, and this is like we could have another 3-hour discussion on this, where if you're not overweight on a player, what's the point in rostering him? Well, that's another podcast. But so I'd prefer to have like 20% of him if he was at 13, but I also don't want to have 20% of Joel Dahman. So if you told me he was 13%, I'd probably go full fade and just move it to, oh my God, whether it's James Hahn or whether it's some of these other guys down here that have at least won a golf tournament before in the past, I'd probably have to do that.
Jimmy Hahn with his 5 straight missed cuts, that's like James Hahn form for winning an event, by the way.
That's what I love the narratives we get. Like anyone else in the world, 5 straight cuts, 8 straight cuts. No, now we talk like that plays into James Hahn's hands, right? Like, oh, he's done it before. Like 8 straight cuts and he won. Who cares?
Yeah, the only other player that works with is Johnny Vegas.
Yeah, right. There's like 2 guys on the planet, and we just like I'm waiting for 3 more miscuts, then I'm gonna play him.
I see that's a smart move right there. What about someone like, Grayson seems underpriced. This course doesn't seem like a great fit for him, but like Grayson is, he's at the same price as Ben Crane. I really like Ben Crane. I think a lot of people really like Ben Crane, but you could talk about like free spaces with Troy Merritt, which can never be a real thing. But I do think that if you want to use Crane and Merritt in cash, I think you could do that.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that's fine. That would probably open up quite a bit of options for you up top, and those are certainly the safer guys down here at the bottom of the list. If you're looking for some more volatile players, or I guess you could probably also play a little further down. Like Stuart Sink is $6,800. You could probably play him in cash. He's never going to win a golf tournament, but I think he's got that top 25, top 30 upside. And then, are you willing? This is pretty deep. Are you willing to go down and
TJ Vogel?
let Robert Garrigus get a little bit of your
action? Listen, Robert Garrigus gets my action, all right? Always. It rarely turns out well, but hey, I just hope that he doesn't have like PTSD when it comes to this course. This was his one shot, and he blew it. He had a 3-stroke lead on 18 and blew it.
He'll step up to the tee of 18 and just start flashing back, and then who knows what happens after that.
Well, even if it's not super hot out, which it always is in Memphis this time of year, he's going to have the same, like, sweating through his pants. Like, it was a really bad... I have a video of it in my column this week, just those final round highlights, and he's just a mess. He's using this putter that's, like, this long. It's hilarious. And just snap hook into the water.
That's so good. I'm going to go back and watch those like round 4 highlights again. I can't wait for that. Oh man, that's exactly what I'm doing today.
There is a guy. And we all liked him like 2 weeks ago. We liked him, and then he missed the cut last week, but has made the cut in all 3 appearances at this course. And he's one of those players that at shorter courses can really score on par 4s when he gets hot. You need his putter to be a little bit hot, because the sand game is just top-notch if that ever plays into it. Danny Lee just is off the radar again after like being on the radar for 1 week, and then boom, he was gone.
How does that happen? How does the entire industry, everyone on Twitter, find something about a player, everyone gets on him, and then we completely forget about the next week? It seems to happen quite a bit. I don't know if I'm maybe as warm on Danny Lee, but just in theory, like, I'm warm on guys that we liked last week. And that could have been, I would have said that 6 months ago, right? Like guys that we liked last week that all of a sudden we don't like this week. Why? I think it's kind of one of these mental Olympics things that we kind of all put ourselves through. But you're right, Pat. Like if we liked him last week, what's not to like this week?
And this is a course which probably sets up for him a little bit more than Memorial. Memorial's a bit too tough for Danny Lee. Against this field, it's probably a bit easier to make the cut. And I do like how hot that he can get throughout certain stretches. And it just doesn't seem like there's going to be any ownership on him. If you're looking to get away from the Cranes or the Merritts or the Daumans who are going to carry this big of ownership, someone like Danny Lee, I think, makes a lot of sense. And listen, you said if you can pivot off one of these guys and get a former PGA Tour winner, he's a former PGA Tour winner.
Wow. Yeah, I agree. And then outside of that, finding some guy who we know has won in their entire life, I like to find guys who are just, again, a small sample of trending up. So I think there is one guy, if I can find him, it's Eric Axley. He's $6,800. Let me see if I can find him.
$6,500.
65. So he's only played 3 times since March. Gained DraftKings points on the field in all 3. Most recently played the Byron Nelson. He scored 75 DraftKings points. He gained 21 points on the field that week. He did play at Corrales, which is one of those weaker fields. So when you're down here at $6,500 and you're desperate, maybe because you got to have DJ in your lineup, he is at least a guy that offers some sort of recent form, which you cannot say for a lot of these guys. I mean, when you're down at $6,600, I'll give you an example. Well, I don't want to pick on Smiley Kaufman. How about DA Points, who has missed at least like 8 cuts in a row, right? So he's definitely a superior option compared to those guys.
Okay, I have a guy for you, which I know really nothing about him, but he popped.
I'll take him, Pat.
he popped out in the model. I was like, what is going on? Like, who is this guy? His name is AJ McInnery. I'm definitely butchering that. He's the league min, $6,400. He has 2 PGA starts. He came 10th at the Shriners in the swing season, and he missed the cut at the Arnold Palmer. Now, at the Arnold Palmer, he gained almost 6 strokes tee to green and lost over 7 putting. If he can keep up those tee to green numbers for $6,400, so in his 2 career PGA starts, he gained 7.6 strokes tee to green at the Shriners. He gained 5.7 at the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Saying where I don't weight putting so much in my model, he just kind of rose to the top, albeit a very small sample. I suppose I should check in to see what he's up to and in terms of overall world golf rankings, if he's playing on the web tour.
Don't do that.
I don't know what the hell he's doing, but it just seemed really strange that this random name popped up.
Don't look up his world golf rankings. That'll spoil your day. I've never even heard of the guy, so I'm not even going to claim to know what he's done. I'm impressed that you were this deep, finding guys to pop off of a model, finding guys who you could build a story around. Yeah, cool, Pat. You the man.
He's not even playing, really. He played at Shriners, and then he played the Panama Championship the first week of February and missed the cut.
I just found him, yeah.
And then he missed the cut at the API.
It took me that entire time to find out even where he was on this cheat sheet, whereas I finally captured him. Yeah, $6,400. You're right. He doesn't play much golf. How old is this guy?
I don't know. He could be 55 for all I know. I assume he's young, but if he's taking all this time off, it just seems strange. How do you approach this as it pertains to guys that maybe you don't like so much or whatever, but the model is telling you one thing? Do you just believe it at some point? Even if it's 5%?
I've gotten to the point where yes. I think there's a lot of noise and a lot of factors, but for the most part, I believe my model more than my opinion. I'd like to remove my opinion from almost everything. So if there is someone who pops off and there is a reason for it, right? Where not just, sometimes you'll see it where, someone gains 12 strokes on the field one week and has lost, strokes for 30 consecutive weeks, something like that. If it's not a significant outlier, yes, I will just listen to it because I kind of trust it at this point. We've been doing this a long time. Again, the opinions are, we kind of talked about it a second ago with James Hahn. They change so drastically week to week that when you have a volatile sport like golf, if you can just plug these guys into the model and remove some of that noise, remove some of that opinion, I think that's a better option.
Okay, so for the below $6,000 range, you Sink?
Sink?
He's 6,800.
Yep.
Axley at 65.
Correct.
Who did I have earmarked here? What about Johnny Question Marks at 69? He makes cuts.
He does make cuts. I'm trying to see who else is in here on his peers. Yeah, I mean, what about, you know who popped off? And this is pretty ugly. I'd have to pull up his stats again. Tom Lovelady was here. I think he's 69 or 7,000. He showed up on a few of my metrics here. Let me see if I can find him real quick. Where just, again, if you shorten up the range, Lovelady's been better recently. This is the type of range where, like, you actually have, like, what about Patton Kizzire, right? Like, he's a two-time champion, but just hasn't, or a two-time winner this year.
Yeah.
But hasn't made a cut.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with him. I have no idea. I have no idea what to do with him. Because just based on pedigree, you should be taking him, but it's not great right now.
It's really ugly. And Pat, are you more of like a recent, I mean, there's always like the recent form versus course history versus kind of pedigree thing. I'm bigger on recent form. I don't think, again, these guys flip a switch when they get to a course, but we've kind of seen sometimes that to be different. Where do you kind of land on that?
I prefer pedigree over anything. I think that usually wins out. Like, even though, like you mentioned when we were talking about Shane Lowry, like, sometimes just trust Vegas versus the pricing, and it doesn't always work, but they tend to know better than I do, so why not trust them when it comes to these sorts of things? And it's led me, like, generally speaking, like, if I find one of these low-owned winners, or like, the only reason that I had Kizzire in any lineup, because he was top 50 in the world, like $6,700. It's like, well, right. He's better than this. He's better than this price. Let's roll with him. Like, I hit Charles at Valspar a few years ago. Like, he was just wildly underpriced. Grace at Heritage. It generally works better with international players, just because they don't get the same credit when they come over to the PGA Tour, even though they might be one of the top tier players, that it just doesn't matter to them. And then after that, I weight recent form a lot closer. But, I mean, I do want to see if these skills are real by any means. Like, if someone has done it 3 tournaments in a row and it's just something they've never done their entire careers, you're like, well, that's a bit fishy. This seems like the bubble could pop here pretty soon. So I think you have to approach each player differently, see where they've come from, see what the results are. Like, someone like Lovelady, for example, like, the only reason that he's playing well right now, and playing well is a bit loose, he's getting a ton of strokes off the tee, and he's actually putting well. Like, the guy can't hit an iron. He can't chip. Like, it's going to keep me off of him.
Yeah, and you make some really good points. I think the international players who, do their primary residence over on the Euro Tour or some other tour, and we saw this a few years ago with Alex Noren, right? Like, he was tearing up the Euro Tour. I think if he was on Euro DraftKings, he was like, $9,500, $10,000. He'd come over to the PGA Tour, he'd be like $7,500, and he's still like the same guy. And no one knew he was ranked like 13th in the world, and before he actually got hot and all that stuff. But yeah, there's definitely a perception issue on a lot of the international players, which is great for us if we're able to kind of, leverage it and take advantage.
I think people are going to like Abraham Answer at $6,900.
I guess, right? Didn't he he dropped every round last week, right? Wasn't he the first round leader?
He was either first or second. He's been like the first round leader like 8 times this year.
True.
And he has like 0 high finishes.
Yeah, he just falls back for the next 3 rounds, and we're like, okay, cool, I guess.
Yeah, maybe you just play like a 3-ball with him in the first round and just be on your way.
Right. Yeah. Showdown contests only.
I think that he's going to carry significant ownership here, though.
You're probably right, because when you scroll through the leaderboard, right, when whether it's the Golf Channel or whatever, when they throw that leaderboard up, and you see the same name over and over. Yeah, I mean, it's going to start to elicit some good feelings. So when you get down to this range and you see, oh, I've seen that name at the top of leaderboards. Yeah, you have. It was, Thursday morning, you saw him at the top of a leaderboard and he never sniffed it again. But I agree with you. Just the name recognition alone, or just the, the recent perception of him, it will probably carry ownership.
Yeah, Garrigus at 67, I'll have to have my shares. If he wins, or even just comes inside the top 20, I'll be like, I should have seen this coming. Because I do see it coming. But I also see him being like 45 over par.
Yeah, and quite honestly, once I start building lineups, I don't know how necessary it's going to be to grab one of these like sub 7,000 guys. It might not be if you go in more balanced approach, or if you're just on a full fade of DJ. So I don't know how necessary it's going to be. But yeah, it's pretty ugly. Maybe it's the Bobby Garrigus redemption tour. Who knows? I could see it.
But it's funny because I just made the case against Answer. The other guy who's sort of like, people really like Abraham Answer. The guy for me that's in this range that is exactly the same as Tyler Duncan.
Oh yeah, which a few months ago he was like the Abraham answer, right? We just changed our entire opinions over to answer, and we're saying the same exact things. We're just pull our string and we'll say it. Yeah, I don't disagree with you there. And then I thought there was one more that I might have liked here. Maybe not. You know who I always confuse? I always confuse Zach Blair with Brian Gay. I could not tell you which one is which. I have no idea.
Zach Blair's a Mormon, I think.
Okay.
He's from Utah, so I assume he's a Mormon.
But Brian Gay had a recent high finish somewhere, right?
Yeah, Brian Gay can put the lights out from time to time. And I guess Zach Blair, I once made, we kind of scroll back to like safe free spaces and safe picks. I was really high on Zach Blair at the Honda Classic, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago. And I believe he finished the week 21 over.
Wow. Yeah, that's not good, Pat.
No,
I could probably get close. Well, no, I probably couldn't. But that's ugly. They're both like pretty short hitters. They're both guys who have like short name. I literally cannot tell you the difference between the two of them.
All right, so let's scroll all the way back around. From that $8,000 range down, I think we were pretty clear of who we like at the top. For me, I'm going to try to figure out what to do with Chappell. I'll probably have shares, but I do like Connors a little bit. Not a guy you need to be massively overweight on. I think Putnam's the same way. Of the $7,000 guys, I like Merritt. I like Ben Crane. I like Dahman. And I will be using some Danny Lee. What other names should I be throwing in there? Should I be playing the Shane Lowrys and Brant Snedekers of the world?
I'm okay with the guys that you named. It's Merritt, it's Dahman, and Ben Crane, I think are the class of this. I've convinced myself on Kevin Chappell. You know, we had the discussion around the model. He pops off on the model. Vegas seems to like him more. So I'll take Chappell. And then you'll probably find my ownership on Tway. And then I'll probably be with the rest of them on Thornberry. Ollie, just, you know, if I need a 65th place finish, I'll roster Ollie, but I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to have – I might have some Tway. I'll have no Ollie. I'll probably have no Thornberry. I think I'd just drop down to the $6,000 level. I can't wait to use my guy, A.J. McInnery. It's going to be great. I can't wait for plus.
You're going to be the only one with him.
Hey, listen, when he's 0.1% and I have 2%,
it's going to be you.
Watch out. There is one guy we should talk about, TJ Vogel, because we never get to use him in DraftKings, but we can this week. This is the 6th time he's qualified for a tournament this season. It never really translates over into anything. He came 14th once, but that was about it. But he is only $6,500. You just ride his form. The fact that he qualified, just go with it.
Yeah, I mean, Monday qualifying has got to be like one of the hardest things to do in golf, right? The guy's done it 6 times. Last time he did it, I can't remember when if someone ever gets added to the field or not, but he never gets added to the field. So we never get to play him. To me, it just at least shows he's good. He's good in pressure situations, right? Like a Monday qualifying is no joke. You get one shot at it. There's very few spots to get in. So he at least plays well enough to do that. And 6 times is like, is that a record yet? I know Patrick Reed did it like 4 or 5 times in one year, but TJ Vogel has been really impressive on Mondays. And if he just makes the cut, right? If he makes the cut at this price, you're thrilled.
Well, he's made 3 cuts in a row. He was 16th at the Valspar, 59th at Wells Fargo, and 66th at Byron Nelson. You know what he doesn't do? Hit approaches.
Well, that's going to be a shame because that's going to be important this week.
He putts well from time to time.
Yeah, it's a dart throw for sure. But look at these guys next to him, right? Like Rob Oppenheim. No thanks.
I believe I played Rob Oppenheim in the past. Where did he pop? I think it was at like the U.S. Open last year or 2 years ago. Like all of a sudden, Rob and Andrew Landry was like in the lead at Oakmont. Forget what it is. The one that Dustin Johnson won with Shane Lowry. Andrew Landry was just there.
Yeah. So TJ Vogel, you're right. Unfortunately, the course doesn't seem to fit him as maybe some other courses did, but $6,500 near min price, right? 64 is the minimum. So yeah, you could do much, much worse.
Okay. So finally, just some outliers and stats that I'm looking at. Par 4's gained. I'm going to talk about this in the course of the past 24 rounds. You got your Stensons and DJs at the top. Just random below $8,000 guys to look at from this range. Putnam and Dahman are 3 and 4. Ben Crane is 9th. Then you got to find Kevin Tway is 14th, Troy Merritt, Chez Reavie, who we didn't even really talk about, but your boy Brian Gay is up there too, and Abraham Answer. What do we do with Chez Reavie? Like, he has not been playing well.
No, he's been brutal. I kind of like him from a few standpoints, and I was a huge Ches guy at the start of the year, especially during the swing season and whatnot. What I like about him is he doesn't make a lot of bogeys, at least long term, right? So this year on tour, or at least in this field, he's like 6th in bogey avoidance. We've talked about a high number coming into play so often this week that I will rely a little bit more on these guys. Chris Kirk actually shows up there. Will McKenzie actually shows up there as well. And then Stenson and DJ lead that category. So I think that Reeve, if you're looking for that kind of long-term pedigree, he's the same price. He's right next to Brandt Snedeker. I think they're similar players. I'm not thrilled to roster him, but he at least shows up on some of the metrics that I think are going to be important this week. It's kind of one of these situations where you throw him in a handful of lineups, you'll probably be overweight on him.
Where did greens and regulation end up rating out for you when you did it pop at all?
Not very highly. Let's see. Greens and regulation was the 25th most correlated stat according to my model.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. Just where these are small greens, I would figure that if you get, but I guess where it's not hard to get up and down, that if you're not generating birdie opportunities from those greens and regulation, there's no different than hitting it to the fringe kind of thing. In that,
go ahead. The 175 to 200 range popped up as like both birdie or better from that range and proximity. They were like top 12 stats, but I'm always a little worried about that because, you don't know where these guys are going to end up hitting it from 175 to 200. DJ is probably going to be closer to the green. So take it for what it's worth. But there are a lot of approach and proximity stats, but greens and regulation didn't come down to 25th.
Okay, so for over the past 24 rounds from 175 to 200, if that is something you want to look at, your leaders, Sung Kang, Tom Hoagie, who we probably should have talked about coming off a good week at Memorial, Lowry, the Gooch, Garrigus, Dustin Johnson, Teef, Phil, Stenson, Casey Wittenberg, Matt Every, Shez Reavie, Stephanie, Neiman, Matt Jones, Conrad Schindler, and then Vaughn Taylor.
Yeah, so there was a couple of names that you rattled off there, which you're going to get me to play Robert Garrigus. I know what you're trying to do here, but Tom Hoagie I think is interesting, right? We saw that he's at least popped off at the top of the leaderboard. That's that range that we're talking about, that 175 to 200. It kind of pops up on my model. I take it with a grain of salt, but then you look at those guys and you think, okay, this does kind of fit, right? There's other names in here that are going to fit the mold. So it's certainly not the worst option you can take. I won't be as highly as maybe others are because I think I can build lineups without him. But hey, sure, take a flyer.
All right, that'll do it on the Pat Mayo Experience. FedEx St. Jude Classic DraftKings Pick and Preview. Go back and watch yesterday's show with Jeff Feinberg to see who we were relying on before we got some WDs. We actually talked about that quite a bit, that guys are going to withdraw, so kind of hold off a little bit. We still might see some more. Again, to recap, Knox, Keegan Bradley, and Patrick Rodgers have all WD'd to this point. Watch out for Adam Scott. Any more names that come along, I will keep that updated in my cheat sheet, which will be up Tuesday afternoon on DKPlaybook.com. Rick, what do you got coming down this way? I saw you already have one video out.
Yeah, actually released the preview for this week. Have the one and done video out for this week. Kind of like you, going to start working on U.S. Open videos and content when that pricing comes out. So yeah, should be a lot of good stuff coming down the pipeline.
Who are you going with in one and done?
This week I have 3 lineups. I'm going to take Koepka. I'm taking I was going to take Adam Scott in one, but he obviously withdrew. I took Neiman in one, and then I think I took Phil in another.
I took Phil on the show. I just don't know where else I'm going to use Phil.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem, right? Like, you can burn him now, and this is probably the time to burn him, or yeah, you're stuck probably never really playing him or being that confident.
What would you do with someone like, I have Dustin left, and I don't think many people have Dustin left. Is this
probably true? Is
this a spot just knowing that no one else has him to run him out there? Because listen, he's the best player in the field. If he wins, I'm just going to crush everyone this week.
Yeah, and you're just going to bank like the $1 million or the 900,000 or whatever it is.
Yeah,
I think that's okay. I've done that in the past where I just take like the guy who's, and I think I probably took DJ when he was like 6-1 or 5-1 at some point, where I took Spieth to do the same thing. But yeah, it is a situation where just bank that money. Everyone is either used DJ, or if not, they're saving him for a major or a playoff event. So yeah, I'm cool with that strategy as kind of a contrarian play.
All right. Where can everyone follow you? Twitter, YouTube, website? Hit us.
Sure. So Twitter is DFS on demand, dfsondemand.com, and on YouTube, I am Rick Run Good.
All right. Thanks for being on the show, dude.
All right, Pat. Really appreciate it.
All right, everyone, that will do it for the show. I'm Pat Mayo. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, where my betting cheat sheet will pop up on Wednesday afternoon at the PME. No live chat this Wednesday. There will be a World Cup preview show coming out Wednesday. Then we're full force into U.S. Open coverage. I'll be giving away some DK bucks and a year-long membership to fantasynational.com. So you're going to want to watch those shows to see what happens. Please like the episode, rate and review the podcast. And that'll do it. Good luck. The St. Jude Classic. We'll see you next time.
Mayo Experience! Experience!